Hi there. So today we thought to share some thoughts on the nature of membering, membering a membership, membering the membrane of a membership. And in this case, while we're all members of the membership that is kinship Earth, we're also speaking specifically to our process of membering the design science studio. Now, in my feeling, in my sense, I think that the studio, with all the growing and the ongoing changes and shifts and the ways in which accidents happened and had their effects on the studio, with all of that, it still feels to me like an organism. Now, if I look at the world from a synergetic point of view, spherically, then really every system that I look at is an organism. And as an organism, it comes with its own way of organizing itself. And that is by the common organizing of the organs of that organism. So every system that we find has a set of subsystems, so to speak. Like, as an example, here is a little 8-eyes that is grown from elder tree. And in this case, we have a membrane that is defining the boundary, binding the inside of this 8-eyes to its outside, and both of them co-arising as universe are the whole. However, this whole system of the 8-eyes here is membered by these branches, or I'd also like to call them fingers in my way of speaking. So these fingers, these members, are in this case the subsystems or the organs, the members membering this one. And what I feel is one of the deepest and most effectful shifts that comes from engaging in synergetics, familiarizing oneself with the perspective of the spheres, is a shift away from a focus on the center of a system to an awareness of the circumtextual side of the system, the circumference, the embrace of the member, the membrane. Because really what is drawing this system into being, into existence, is the common drawing together of all its members. And because they are constituting a whole system, all together they are drawing in, thereby generating the center of gravity of the system. But the actual process or the act of drawing is one that is directed around the system. The resultant sense of being drawn into the system, that's a sense of the whole, of the wholeness. But it is important, I think, to keep the embrace, the circumference in mind and in heart, in all walks of life, in everything that we do. Anecdotally, I think it's funny that there's a book, I've got it somewhere, about Buckminster Fuller, called Buckminster Fuller Inc. Architecture in the Age of Radio, I think. And there's a lot of interesting, super interesting aspects of the role that radio as a technology played in Buckminster Fuller's life, in Bucky's life. And what I felt when I read that was that it kind of missed an aspect of Bucky's perspective that I don't think it's well understood or even spoken to, but I think it is very significant, and that is that I think in Bucky's sense, the radio was not so much just about the radii, as we would think of, the radiation going out from the emitter of the radio signal. But it was very much bringing into awareness the circumferentio, if you like, the embracing the embracive sphere of the radio that comes with the radii. And that is why Bucky, for instance, called the vector equilibrium the dimexion in his earlier days. He called it 4D first because it's four-dimensional, and then he called it dimexion in that phase of his life when quite a lot of the creations that he was working on got that as a name, like the dimexion map and the car and the house, but really significantly the dimexion as a shape, which we have here. And this is later called the vector equilibrium, or I would call it the 2 dozen 8 eyes. Oops. And it is the shape of a dozen spheres around one. And in this case, with the nice colors, we do see the 4 dimensions because it's 4 hexes interwoven. But they also show how all of the radii of this system co-arise with the circumferential vectors, with the vectors that go around the sphere, around the hex, around the system. Those are, if you like, the circumferential side of things. And I do feel very much that this is a very, sorry for the shake, this is a very, very central aspect of Bucky's perspective on the world, is to realize, for instance, that gravity is the same operating principle as is surface tension in water, because gravity operates around the system. And the only reason it seems to be drawing us down really into the earth is because the earth is a whole system, and the whole of us in the membership draw together, and the only place that this being drawn together points to and leads to is to our common center, our common heart. Now, one last perspective on this membrane is this one here, which has a direct relationship to the one I just showed you, to 2 dozen 8 eyes. This is a dozen 8 eyes. And inside of it is another one, which is the membrane of the vector equilibrium. Basically, only the circumferential vectors of the other one I showed you spinning under my ceiling. And in this case, the vectors that are on that other one going as radii to the center, in this case they are drawn out to the vertices of this larger system. And I think this is a very beautiful model for what we could call Indra's web, for the interrelationship of all life and universe, because we're all drawing towards one another. We're all drawn in and out and around, and you know, that's a very common trait of life. And to me, I want to be mindful of the embrace of the sphere. It is the same mindfulness that I bring into every circle that I meet people in, be it in a dance or in the capoeira or just in being among people. Yes, I am looking into the circle because I'm facing that way, but I'm also looking out through the corners of my eyes, keeping in mind that I am membering that circle. And however big or small the circle may grow, even if I'm on my own, I'm still mindful of it. I'm full of its mind too. It's a back and forth kind of relationship. We could call it compendence, which is a word not otherwise used for this meaning, but we can use it in place of interdependence or dependence or independence, because all of these are dependencies. And that, in its original meaning, speaks to a pendulum hanging off of another body. So it is depending, it's hanging off of, just as this is hanging off of my hand right now. However, if we de-emphasize the sizes of the members involved, and we take out the hierarchy that is implicit in the understanding of a dependency, whichever way we depend on one another, we can shift to compendence and compendency, because that is, in the true meaning of the word, speaking to the hanging together, not hanging off of, but hanging together. And I think that gives us a very healthy shift in our balance between one another, because our true self is the whole. There's no way around that. We cannot cut anyone out of the whole, because what makes anybody somebody is that they embrace and embody their inside and their outside at the same time. And to forget that, or to ignore the complementarity of these two sides of the whole, can only have dire consequences. And to get a sense of those, just take a look anywhere around. Currently, in our times, the level of destruction and disintegration that has come out of the sort of geometry, arguably, that we've been taught, where lines divide and separate and bodies are solid and unchanging, all of that has a tremendous impact on the way that we sense and recognize and identify ourselves as well as our others. And what I want to invite with all my wordplay, including these thoughts about membranes and membrings, is a shift, a mindful shift to a sense of geometry that is animate and alive, and mindful of all our kin, all our other, because it is precisely the other that makes us one self, one another, one self. There's no self without another. So the true self, the true one self, is both one and another. It is both inside and outside. And that is what I think the membrane may remind us of. It may bring us to remember that the whole has no parts, however many members it may have. So rather than thinking of ourselves as being a part of nature, which would already imply that nature is constituted of parts, so it's not a whole, but a collection of parts. Rather than making that assumption in the way that we speak, let's see ourselves for a change as members of universe, members of kinship Earth, members of one another. And I wonder where that leads us, where that will get us to. And I hope that we may find that way together. We take step by step and stumble with grace as we embrace this shift in shape and sense, this way of connecting and collecting and growing whole, healing and repairing in and out to become whole, allowing wounds and trauma to grow together, to heal and cherish the scars, because as much as they remind us of the hurt and the trauma, they also embody the healing. And that is what we're here for. That is what we're sphere for. We are growing into an age of recovery. And I feel that it is a good place to be if we do mind the whole. Thank you, and see you soon.